Sekeres and Price from the Historic Wall Center. We are joined now by Jeff Marek. His new show, The Sheet, here on the Nation Network, debuts December 2nd. He told us all about that a couple of weeks ago, and he's back here for more. So we did alienate you on the first hit. Very pleased about that. Welcome back.
I didn't bore your audience enough to make them wonder if they should go sort out their sock drawers or listen to Marek on Sekeres and Price. And I guess I'm back for a second whack at the pinata. How you doing today,
Absolutely.
boys?
Yeah, we're doing very well. And we see you tweeting upon tweeting of these BCHL defections.
Oh,
we're going to get to that story here in a second. It was a very big week in the BCHL. Yeah. But first, I want to start with the Vancouver Canucks. And your sense on how they're going to manage this JT Miller absence, Jeff.
This one really, this one to me is crushing. I don't need to tell you. You're a lot closer to it. No, you don't need the Ontario guy to tell you how good JT Miller is. You guys are right there, and you see it game in and game out. I don't want to say that he's an irreplaceable hockey player, but when JT Miller is on, he's every team's dream, right? Like, I'm not misreading this. Like, he does everything that you want in a hockey player. And he's the type of player that, I mean, how many times have you heard, whether it's at the draft, whether it's trade deadline, whether it's in the off season, teams describe the type of player they're looking for, and you're like, oh, you want JT Miller, right? Like, these guys don't exist. First of all, you think of the person and you hope that everything is okay, and you hope that he can come back healthy and productive. But I don't know that there's one simple way you do it. Look, Elias Pettersson is playing better, and that's fantastic as well. We all know where the holes are on this lineup. I'm sure we're going to get to Thatcher Demco here in a couple of moments as well. But I don't know that you have like one solution for a leave of absence from someone like JT Miller. He is, and maybe I'm talking about him like he invented oxygen here, but I just love the guy. Like, I just think that he's like that fantastic of a hockey player. There's not one quick solution for what you do to try to mitigate the loss.
Is there a comparable for the absence? Like, you're a good encyclopedia for this thing. I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you think of and there is an injury component to his absence, but can you think of a guy just upping and being gone in the middle of a season like this?
I can't think of someone off the top of my head right now, but I will say this. I'm still surprised that it doesn't happen more often.
I mean, it might now, right? This might be a precedent.
Yep.
I honestly think about, we tend to think about sports and put it on a certain pedestal, and like, okay, sports exist in some sort of alternative reality, completely devoid from any other job. But look at any other workspace. I mean, people take leave of absences all the time for a number of different reasons. And I don't know why sports should be any different than that, or we should have any different expectations of that. I know that there's a lot of, sort of like, masculinity and macho, like, suck it up and play, and, you get paid a lot. Like, I get all that, but there is a sort of human reality to all of it. And especially for a player like JT Miller, who plays like a really robust, aggressive, hard game. For him to take a leave like this, I'm sure, wasn't an easy decision. But again, like, I'm in the camp that says I'm surprised that it doesn't happen more often, as I sort of filibuster here, Blake, and try to figure out like when we've seen this before that didn't involve an injury.
I mean, left field sort of stuff like Marian Hossa retiring with the skin condition, like things like, but that's sort of
Jonathan Taves, long COVID, but again, like, principally a physical concern, as opposed to a combination
and he literally just today made news, Jonathan Taves, saying that he's been in India with getting treatment.
I'm telling you, I've been saying this for years. Low-key, undercover, the most interesting player in the NHL, and has been for a long time. I've talked to so many people in and around Jonathan Taves for so many years that he's like the one, there's that one player that you always want to interview when the career is done, because you're going to get gold. And that while they're playing, A lot of all our answers are in that dressing room and 110% and stick to our game and man for man, we're better than any team, and like all of that. But when the career is over, you're gonna get like the most dynamic, interesting non-hockey interview. To me, it's Jonathan Toews. So when we saw that pop up on Instagram, I wasn't shocked necessarily, but I know certainly the hockey world was, and they weren't prepared for that. Like, he'd been on podcasts previously where he sort of winked at and hinted at a different way to live his life or a different philosophy that guided his life as he went through his career as a professional hockey player. So I don't, personally, I wasn't surprised by it, because I think that underneath all of it, there exists the most interesting hockey player maybe in this generation. Yep.
And whatever makes him happy at this point.
Whatever works, man. Like, honestly, life's hard.
And whatever, if you missed the story, he went to India to heal his immune system in a special sort of detox center. So good on. The thing with Miller is, Jeff Patterson said, like, you could hear a pin drop at morning skate on Tuesday as the players realized what was going on here. And to their credit, it was good effort against the Rangers. They didn't win the game, but it was a good effort. Everybody pulled on the rope, understood who was missing, and compensated as best they could for him. Now they're on a 6-game road trip, Jeff, and Miller is the emotional center. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these next 6 games go with the team on the road and bonding, and because typically JT is right in the middle of all of that. And that'll be a big
but you consider Besser and Demco just got on that plane with them, which might buoy.
Fair enough.
The other point about it is, I remember talking to one general manager, this is like 10, 15 years ago, and the schedule had just come out. And this team is a team that made a lot of off-season moves, and they started the season out with like 10 of 15 games on the road. And I was talking to him, and I said, this really sucks for you guys. Like, hey, sorry about the schedule. He said, no. This is perfect for us. We have a whole bunch of new faces. Nobody knows each other. We need to be out on the road. Like, that's the place where a team at home, it's like 23 guys and 23 Ubers. On the road, like, that's that's where, like, you're around the guys. Like, that's where it happens. Like, I know you may look at this and say, oh man, the JT Miller situation, and they're on the road. That's where you want the team. Like, those are the places where you're going to be together more, as opposed to at home, where everybody's got their own thing and their own family and their own dynamic and their own lane. You want to keep guys as together as you can when you have an absence like JT Miller. I don't think that the road trip is necessarily a bad thing for the Vancouver Canucks at this point.
Particularly if they have any modicum of success, I think that.
Yes, and as we've talked about, it's not a murderer's row here. There are some games that are winnable, even if it is difficult to win on the NHL road. From one unique situation to another, Thatcher Demco looks poised to return here. Jeff, I'm just interested in your understanding of everything with Demco since this popliteus muscle injury came up.
I play a doctor on television, Matt, so I'll tell you what.
I said that line yesterday, so this is happening every day now.
Look, I just want this guy to be healthy. When he's healthy, he's one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, full stop. And everything in life is easier when you have that guy and that guy healthy. We've always, you guys have had this conversation before as well. Like, how many elite level goaltenders are there in the NHL? It's not many, right? There's not many, but Vancouver has one. And when he's healthy, Thatcher Demko is one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. And it just makes everything better. Like, when every mistake ends up in your net, ask Edmonton what that feels like right now. And Edmonton, right now are making, a lot of excuses about playing hard and attention to detail and all that. But we know what's going on. The goalie's hard to hit. And when your goalie is hard to hit, wins are hard to come by. You hope that he's healthy. You hope he stays healthy. I heard you guys talking about that last podcast as well. Like, it's one thing to get there, and then, like, the last thing you want is for Thatcher Demko to be false started. Played 3 or 4 games and now something happened. You just hope that he's healthy, he's playing, and he stays healthy for the remainder of the season, because the Vancouver Canucks have one of the great blessings here if he's healthy. An elite level, high end goaltender. Not too many teams have that. Not at that price, anyway.
you're worried a little bit about his headspace too, based on the last 6 months of his life, and he sounded great yesterday. So that's the good news there. Let's get to a story that fans might not have initially thought, "Oh, this applies to us. This has BC, ramifications," even with the CHL teams that are in BC. But this CHL-NCAA rule change now that will allow players to move from the CHL to college hockey if they so choose. Has more than just the ramifications on the CHL teams. The BCHL is in the crosshairs here because they were designed. They did what they did a couple of years ago to make it easier for players to go to the BCHL and ultimately jump into college hockey. This is sort of blowing up in the face of the BCHL, isn't it?
And the USHL as well. But for the purposes of your audience, like certainly the BCHL. And on Friday morning, I reported about Liam Beamish, Penn State commits, who's just left Salmon Arm. There might be a couple of more off that team as well that we wonder about. Like, I understood the idea of what the BCHL was trying to do. Did any of us know a couple of years ago that this was going to be the reality? That the NCAA was going to change their regulations and definitions of what a pro and amateur player was for the purposes of allowing people into Division I? No. So I think we all understood the idea of that Super League and drawing talent from all the provinces across Canada. Like, I think we all understood it. Mm-hmm. One of the things, I mean, it's one thing to talk about the law of unintended consequences, and then there's the other reality. And unfortunately, you're starting to see this right now. You know, any historian in any field will talk about the concept of getting caught up in the gears of history. And the first group here with the NCAA redefining CHL players, the first group getting caught up in the gears of history right now are the BCHL and the USHL. And the BCHL, I mean, this is like the trickle effect. Like, guys, I mean, you're on Twitter X, you see this every day. Different player leaving. What are we up to now? 15? We're not out of November yet, and there's 15. Now, I know they're not all elite talents from all the teams, and I get that. But at the same time, like when Jack Pridham left to go to the Kitchener Rangers, and he's a BU commit. Jack Pridham's a third-round draft with the Chicago Blackhawks. His father's the assistant general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Great hockey family. His sister plays at McGill. When he left to go to Kitchener of the OHL, I think a lot of spines sort of straightened up and went, ooh, this is serious. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with someone like, I think we all wonder about, like, the Caleb Malhotras of the world. And as of right now, he's staying. Will that change? How many players, if any, end up going before Christmas here? This is a really tough situation for the BCHL. It's not one that they or anyone else foresaw. So it's not as if we can say, well, you should have seen this coming and insulated yourself. No, this is the gears of history. And this is a league that has got caught up here in the in the gears of history.
Let me push back on that for a second here, Jeff. Okay. And I will preface it by saying that we have a great rapport with Chris Hebb, the CEO of the BCHL. Like him a lot. And yes, the Super League of taking those good AJHL franchises and bringing them together, not to mention expanding down to Wenatchee as they did.
And eliminating the borders.
There was vision. Was vision there, and quite like what he was doing from a hockey point of view and from positioning the league as, the pathway towards NCAA scholarships. But that Ed O'Bannon antitrust name, image, and likeness lawsuit was settled in October 2015. Mm-hmm. And from that moment onward, I think you could make a case that the NCAA was on the clock in terms of the way they were doing business and the way they were defining amateurism. And, it's been pretty clear if you've watched college basketball and college football for the last couple of years that, these players are going to be getting paid, and the NCAA doesn't have the hammer like they used to about who's eligible and who isn't eligible. So, I understand why hockey might have thought they were separate, but, Blake and I sit here and talk about, how in the world can the NCAA, Michigan just signed a high school quarterback yesterday, or got a commitment from him. He flipped from LSU to Michigan, and the rumor is he's going to make $12 million to go join the Wolverines football program. Like, how in a world where, high school recruits were being promised tens of millions of dollars, was the NCAA going to continue to say, no, you played in a junior hockey game, you got bored, you got a stipend for meals, so you're a professional and you can't play with us.
I do wonder if, because there's a couple of things here. One, I do wonder if no one considered that there'd be a redefinition of Canadian players as opposed to what this means for Americans. I also wonder about the nature of college coaches. Like, there's a dozen super powerful Division I programs with very high profile coaches, and their message was always, we will never go for this. This is not something that we will vote for. Like this, and you're right. Like this, like I said, football couldn't stop it. Saban said, threw his arms up in the air and said, I can't do anything. I can't stop this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out. So maybe looking back, hindsight being 2020, was sort of folly for us to think that once this ball got rolling, that anything was going to stop it. But you had high profile people in college hockey saying this is not going to happen. And at the annual meeting last year, they postponed the vote. I don't think they wanted the vote, maybe because for fear of they're going to vote to disallow it, and then the lawyers are going to walk in and say, your vote is meaningless. You're wasting all of your time. This thing, it became obvious around, I want to say last January. Elliot and I first started talking about it on 32 last year. And trust me, guys, the ridicule that we got from people in NCAA, and I'll be blunt, from fellow media members saying how much out to lunch we were and why are we making up this BS story and you guys are full of it. College coaches will never go for it. And I remember having a conversation with someone in our industry, gentlemen, saying, this isn't the coach's decision. This is lawyers. Mm-hmm. Coaches can feel however they want to feel. The NCAA is sick of losing lawsuits. And I kept saying, football couldn't stop it. What makes you think hockey can?
Hockey could, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No,
what
exactly.
Makes you think? Yeah. But honestly, I think that maybe a lot of people sort of went along with the ride, believing that there was almost like a special carve out for hockey. Coaches kept saying it. Programs kept saying, no, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen to hockey. I mean, listen, there still is one wrench that could end all of this. There's one thing that could happen here that would halt all of this. I don't think it happens anytime soon, but it is being discussed. I had a conversation with someone not too long ago who said, look, the way that it's headed right now, if college athletes tomorrow are redefined as employees, this is over. This is done. Because now you have work issues that you need to deal with and visas that you need to deal with.
Right.
All of a sudden,
visas.
Immigration issues, yes.
All of a sudden, it's. But again, we're not there yet. But in the sort of spirit of let's just have everything on the table for the conversation.
Right. Yeah,
I think that's one thing we need to
that.
keep in the hip pocket for down the road. Like as much as everyone's sort of getting, and I'm guilty as anybody. I'm firing these names out there and speculating about this, and I'm talking to Mackenzie about it. Like everyone, I've talked to Glenn Heffron of the USHL about it. But I always say to myself, guys, maybe you're the same way. What am I missing? There's something here that I'm sure that when I'm going to look back on it in a year, I'm going to go oh, how did I miss that? I don't know what that thing is, but I just wonder okay, because there's always the law of unintended consequence. What is the one thing that we're all missing here? Because, Matt, maybe to your point, maybe we all sort of lied to ourselves or hockey lied to ourselves that this isn't going to happen. That's football, it'll happen, sure, but it's not going to happen to hockey. Is there something now that this is rolling along that we're all missing? I don't know.
Before you go, Hockey Canada has not had a great couple of years. Lawsuits aplenty from every angle, of course.
Yep.
They are not doing well. But now they have some high ground on the BCHL at the very least. BCHL goes rogue. They're able to steal players from across the country with impunity because they're outside the Hockey Canada purview for a couple of years.
Yep.
But now with all this going down,
yeah.
first of all, do you think the BCHL goes hat in hand and says, can you take us back? And B, does Hockey Canada, who finally have high ground on an issue, do they take them back or do they say, screw you, you left?
You know what? That is so interesting you mentioned that because, I was having a conversation with someone this morning and we were talking about, there was one significant person in hockey who, if BCHL went back to Hockey Canada, this person said like the anger that you would see would be palpable
from the AJHL and others. You mean?
No. This isn't well sourced, so I don't want to go too full on with it. But there would be an anger from some corners if that happened. Now, does it happen? I could see it. And if you're Hockey Canada, I think you have to have the conversation. I don't think that you can, this isn't like arbitration. Okay, we got the hammer, and we're going to use the hammer here.
Right.
I don't know that it's that. And listen, Hockey Canada has struck under Catherine Henderson here. It struck a much different tone. This is I know that the 13 members are all still the same, but there's a new board. There's a new head, Catherine Henderson, who comes over from Curling Canada. It is a humbler Hockey Canada. It is a much more conciliatory Hockey Canada. For the longest time, and you guys felt it, after 2010, Hockey Canada became the most arrogant hockey group you have ever seen, right? There's the old quote about if you want to judge a person, don't give them adversity, give them power. People can overcome adversity. Give them power and see how they behave. Hockey Canada, after Double Golden Van, became almost insufferable at the arrogance. But all the money was coming in and the sponsorships and the golds and every level. Matt, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, Joe, I'm so glad you brought that up because, first of all, there was a healthy dose of arrogance before 2010, but yes.
Well, with all the junior goals, with 5 in a row.
Yeah, it got on steroids after 2010, and just the way they approached not only whatever happened in London with the World Junior players, who and that's not done, but also with the way that they administered fees to pay off a hush money. Yeah, I mean, it was clear that there were a lot of people in that organization that thought they were untouchable. I am so pleased to hear you say that there is a different tone from Hockey Canada now.
There is, and there has to be.
Because here's the thing. Well, there has to be, and there's egos involved. And look, Chris Hebb is not short of bravado, and I'm sure he probably rubbed them the wrong way as he took the BCHL in the direction he did, and then poaching the AJHL teams.
Yep.
I would like to believe that all the decision makers understand it's not about them and their egos. It's about the kids and the best pathways,
and they don't want the proverbial blood on their hands.
Opportunities.
They don't want to kill hockey in BC by doing that, and you'd kill a lot.
Yeah, because the BCHL in a lot of communities, we know a ton of fans. We know a ton of people who are season ticket holders. The Penticton Vs, that is their Friday night in Penticton between September or October and March, and they absolutely love it. And that plays out in a number of communities in this province, and we would hate to lose that.
Well, once upon a time, if this situation had befallen a different Hockey Canada, I think there would have been, how am I going to phrase this? Yeah. I think there would have been an element of, oh, sure, come back and kiss the ring.
Yes.
But I don't think that exists anymore in hockey. Not under Catherine Henderson.
That would be good. That would be good. Yeah. Well, you're doing fantastic work on this story, buddy, and I know you're
tweeting out names every day.
Well, no, but
low-hanging fruit is still nutritious, Matt. Low-hanging fruit is still nutritious.
Jeff, I got to hand it to you because we've had the discussion on this show forever about are we a hockey country or are we an NHL country? Every December it looks like we're a hockey country, but then outside of the World Juniors, how much do we actually pay attention to Major Junior and to Junior A and to all the other levels of hockey? Like I always argue, the second best team in most Canadian cities is your local U Sport team.
Yeah.
I think they don't
I think we're
draw
hockey
like
country by way of participation, though, too. Like I think
For sure.
we always look at it and say, yeah, we're all interested in the NHL, but ask any hockey mom or dad what their favorite games are, and they'll say it's my son or daughters.
Of course it is. And I got to give you credit for covering all levels of the sport,
man.
as you will on the sheet when it debuts on December 2nd here on the Nation Network. And we're going to have you on Fridays here. On
Pleasure,
Saturday.
as
Looking
always.
forward
Thank
to
you,
it.
Jeff.
Forward to it.
Thanks, boys. Be
Thanks,
well.
Jeff. Be well.